My name is Aaron, and I work the overnight shift at a gas station just off the interstate. It's the kind of place people don't remember stopping at. Two pumps on each side, a small convenience store with flickering fluorescent lights, and a parking lot that always smells faintly like oil and burnt coffee. During the day, it's busy enough, but once midnight hits, the world seems to forget it exists. That's exactly why I took the job. I'm not much of a people person, and the overnight shift pays a little more. From 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., it's usually just me, the hum of the refrigerators, and the occasional semi-truck pulling in for fuel. Most customers pay cash, grab something quick, and leave without saying more than a grunt. For the first 6 months, nothing unusual ever happened. Then one night, around 2:40 a.m., the register printed a receipt I didn't ring up. I was in the back restroom when it happened. I remember because I was washing my hands when I heard the printer start up through the thin wall. That sharp mechanical whine cut through the silence, followed by the familiar tearing sound as a receipt dropped into the tray. At first, I thought I'd left the transaction open somehow. When I walked back to the counter, the store was empty. No customers. No cars outside. The receipt was sitting there neatly, still warm. It listed a bottle of water, a pack of gum, and a candy bar. Paid in cash. Timestamp. 2:41 a.m. I checked the cameras. The footage showed me walking toward the bathroom. Then, for 9 seconds, the camera feed froze. When it resumed, I was coming back out. No customer ever appeared. I chalked it up to a system glitch. Old cameras, old register. This place barely passed inspections as it was. I threw the receipt away and finished my shift. The next night, it happened again. Different items. Same deal. Cash transaction. No customer. Camera freeze. 9 seconds exactly. That's when I started keeping the receipts. By the fourth night, I realized there was a pattern. The transactions always happened when I stepped away from the counter. Bathroom. Back storage room. Even once when I bent down to restock the cigarette display. Always just long enough for me to not be watching. Always when the store was otherwise empty. I reviewed the footage frame by frame. Every angle. Every camera. Nothing. No doors opening. No movement. Just that brief digital stutter, like the system itself was blinking. What really got to me was the register. You need a login code to complete a sale. Mine. I asked my manager if anyone else had access. He laughed and told me to stop overthinking it. Probably just the system catching up, he said. That thing's older than both of us. I wanted to believe him. Then the message appeared. It printed where store promotions usually go, right under the total. At first, I thought it was a corrupted ad or a formatting error. But when I read it, my stomach dropped. You locked the door too late. I stood there staring at the receipt for a full minute. Every night at 1 a.m., per policy, I locked the front door and switched to night service only. Customers have to use the side window. I had locked it at 1:07 that night. I checked the cameras again. No one at the door. No one at the pumps. I started locking it earlier. The message changed. You still check your phone. I stopped doing that too. The next receipt read, you look down when you count change. I began to understand. Whoever was doing this wasn't hacking the system from outside. They were watching me. Inside the store. I started feeling it during my shifts, that pressure between my shoulder blades like someone standing just out of view. Every time the printer clicked or the fridge compressor kicked on, my heart jumped. I stopped leaving the counter unless absolutely necessary. Then one night, the receipt didn't print. Instead, the register drawer opened by itself. I hadn't touched it. Inside, the cash was rearranged. All the bills facing the same direction. Neat. Intentional. On top of them sat a folded piece of receipt paper. Written in pen. Smile more. Cameras like that. I quit the next morning. Or at least I tried to. When I went back to the store to turn in my keys, my manager looked confused. Said I hadn't worked there in weeks. Said he'd already filled my position. When I checked my bank account, my last paycheck was dated 3 weeks earlier. I went home and found something taped to my apartment door. A receipt. Timestamp. 2:41 a.m. Total, $0. Message at the bottom. Shift starts tonight. I never planned on working overnight at a radio station. It just sort of happened. I graduated with a communications degree and, like a lot of people, quickly realized that a diploma didn't magically turn into a job. A small local AM station was hiring a late-night host. Nothing fancy, just someone to keep the broadcast running between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady, and I figured it would look good on a resume. The station itself was tucked into the second floor of an old brick building downtown. During the day, it felt lively enough. DJs, producers, interns running around with coffee cups. But at night, it was a completely different place. After midnight, I was alone. My job was simple. Cue playlists, read weather updates every hour, and take the occasional call from insomniacs or truckers driving through town. Most nights, the phone never rang. I'd sit in the studio, lights dimmed, watching the meters bounce while classic rock played to an audience I couldn't see. I liked the quiet. For the first few weeks, nothing strange happened. Then one night, around 3 a.m., the phone line lit up. It didn't ring. The indicator just turned red, like someone was already on the line. I frowned and leaned forward, checking the console. The line was active. No incoming alert, no call tone, just open. I pressed the button and said, "You're on the air." All I heard was breathing. Slow, steady, close. At first, I assumed it was a drunk caller messing around. That happens sometimes. I asked if they wanted to say anything. The breathing stopped. Then, through my headphones, I heard my own voice. Not an echo, not feedback. It was delayed by maybe 2 seconds, repeating exactly what I just said, with the same tone and inflection. I froze. I pulled the headphones off and stared at the board, half expecting something to be obviously wrong. The meters were still moving. The line was still open. I hung up. The line disconnected immediately. I sat there for a while, trying to rationalize it. Feedback loop? Maybe. A technical hiccup. Old equipment. Still, I didn't put the headphones back on for a few minutes. The next night, it happened again. Same time. 3:17 a.m. Same thing. No ring. Just a live line. This time, I didn't say anything. I waited. The breathing came back. Louder than before. Like the caller was right up against the phone. Then, softly, the voice spoke. "You shouldn't sit with your back to the door." I spun around so fast my chair nearly tipped over. The studio door was open. I knew for a fact I'd closed it. I always did. I rushed over and slammed it shut, heart pounding. I locked it and stood there listening. The hallway outside was silent. When I went back to the console, the line had disconnected on its own. I reported it to the station manager the next morning. He brushed it off, said the phone system was ancient and probably crossed a signal or picked up interference. I wanted to believe that, but the calls kept coming, always at 3:17 a.m. Sometimes it was breathing, sometimes silence. Once it was a low humming sound that didn't match any song we played. One night, I made the mistake of speaking first again. I said, "Who is this?" 2 seconds later, the voice answered. "Who is this?" in my voice. That was the night I started locking the studio door and pulling my chair closer to the console so I could keep my eyes on everything at once. I stopped taking requests. I stopped acknowledging the calls on air. But the line didn't care. One night, the caller spoke without me prompting. "You change your schedule," the voice said. My stomach dropped. I'd started arriving 10 minutes earlier after the first incident just to make sure everything was set up before midnight. I didn't respond. The voice continued. "You park farther away now." That was true, too. I disconnected the line with shaking hands. A minute later, it lit up again. This time, when I looked at the call display, there was no number. Just a word. Studio. That was when I seriously considered quitting. The only reason I didn't was money. I needed the paycheck, and I kept telling myself that whoever was doing this would eventually get bored. They didn't. The call started bleeding into the broadcast. Listeners began messaging the station's social media accounts, asking why there was heavy breathing between songs late at night. One person asked why the host kept repeating himself. I hadn't heard on my end. When I checked the archive broadcast recordings, my blood ran cold. Between tracks, during moments when I've been sitting silently, the audio picked up faint breathing. And underneath it, barely audible, was a second voice. Not delayed, not mimicking, whispering. I couldn't make out the words, but it was there. One night, I decided I'd had enough. When the line lit up at 3:17, I didn't hesitate. I hit the talk button and said, "This isn't funny anymore. You need to stop." There was a pause. Then the voice said, "Turn around." I didn't. I said, "Turn around." It repeated, closer this time. I yanked the headphones off and ran to the door, locking it again, even though it already was. I stood there listening, every muscle tense. That's when I heard it. A soft click, like a switch being flipped. The red on-air light turned off. I hadn't touched anything. The music stopped. The meters went dead. The studio was silent. Then the phone rang. Actually rang this time. I didn't answer. It rang until it stopped on its own. The system rebooted a minute later, music resuming as if nothing had happened. When my shift ended, I left without looking back. I didn't quit immediately. I told myself I'd give it one more night, just to prove to myself that I wasn't losing it. That was a mistake. The final night, the call came early. 2:58 a.m. The voice didn't bother with breathing this time. "I'm outside," it said. My heart hammered. "No, you're not," I whispered. The voice laughed. Not loudly, just a quiet, amused sound. "Look at the cameras." The station had security monitors in the corner of the studio. I'd never paid much attention to them before. I forced myself to look. The front entrance camera showed the empty street. The back alley camera was dark. The hallway camera. I stopped breathing. The hallway feed showed someone standing just outside the studio door. Tall, motionless, too close to the lens to see their face. They raised a hand and knocked. Once, twice. The voice came through the headphones again, even though I hadn't put them on. Dead air isn't good for ratings. The doorknob turned. The lock held. Barely. I grabbed my phone and called 911, whispering as I explained where I was. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. The knocking stopped. On the camera, the hallway was empty again. When the police arrived, they found nothing. No sign of forced entry. No one on the street. No footprints. No witnesses. I quit that morning. The station manager tried to convince me to stay. Said stress can do weird things to people working nights alone. I didn't argue. I still listen to that station sometimes. Late at night. Every now and then, between songs, I hear a faint pause. Just long enough to wonder if the broadcast is still live. And sometimes, right before the music comes back, I hear breathing. It wasn't a bad job. The pay was decent, the work was mostly easy, and for the most part, guests didn't bother you at night unless something went wrong. A broken key card, a clogged toilet, an elevator alarm, things like that. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. After midnight, the hotel felt like a different place. During the day, it was busy and loud. Tourists, business travelers, conference guests drifting in and out of the lobby. At night, the sound dropped away. The carpet muffled footsteps. The air felt thicker. Even the elevators seemed slower, like they were tired too. Most nights followed the same routine. I'd check the boiler room, make a round through the service corridors, and then sit at the maintenance desk near the back offices, watching security feeds and waiting for calls. The night this happened started completely normal. At around 2:20 a.m., the front desk called and told me the service elevator had stopped between floors. That wasn't unusual. The elevator was old and temperamental, mostly used by staff for laundry carts and supplies. It jammed every couple of months, usually because someone overloaded it. I grabbed my radio, flashlight, and tool bag and headed toward the service hallway. The elevator panel showed it stuck between floors 3 and 4. As I got closer, I heard the emergency phone ringing inside the car. That was the first thing that bothered me. Usually, when the elevator stalled, whoever was inside would call the front desk directly. Hardly anyone used the emergency phone unless they were panicking. I keyed my radio and asked the front desk if a guest was stuck inside. They said no. No calls. No reports. No missing guests. I stopped in front of the elevator doors and listened. The ringing continued. I pressed the call button on the outside panel. No response. Then I picked up the emergency phone on the wall outside the shaft and answered. Static. No voice. Just a faint clicking sound, like someone tapping the receiver. I asked if anyone was inside the elevator. Nothing. The ringing inside the car stopped. The silence that followed felt wrong. I tried to open the doors manually using the override key. The doors resisted at first, then slid apart just enough for me to see inside. The elevator car was empty. No luggage, no carts, no people. I radioed the front desk and told them the elevator was clear. They sounded confused but said okay. As I stepped closer, I noticed something else. The floor of the elevator was wet. Not flooded, just damp, like someone had stepped inside with wet feet. Bare footprints. They were small, but clearly human. They started near the back wall and faced toward the doors. I stared at them longer than I should have. There was no water dripping from anywhere. The ceiling was dry. The walls were clean. Only the floor. I backed away and closed the doors. I told myself it was condensation or something mundane, but deep down I knew that wasn't true. I finished resetting the system and got the elevator moving again. It returned to the ground floor without any issues. For the next hour, nothing happened. I tried to shake the feeling, but I kept glancing at the security monitors. Every time I checked the service hallway camera, my chest tightened, even though it was always empty. At 3:41 a.m., the elevator stopped again. Same location, between floors 3 and 4. This time, there was no ringing. I didn't move right away. I waited, listening. Then the emergency phone rang once. Just once. I picked up my radio and asked the front desk if they had received any calls. They hadn't. Against my better judgment, I went back to the elevator. When I opened the doors this time, the footprints were gone. The floor was completely dry, but the air inside the car smelled wrong. Not like sweat or mildew. It smelled metallic. I don't know why I did it, but I stepped inside. The door slid shut behind me. The elevator didn't move. I pressed the button for the ground floor. Nothing happened. Then, very slowly, the indicator light flickered. 3, 4, 5. The elevator began moving upward. I hadn't pressed those floors. I pressed the emergency stop. Nothing. My radio crackled. Not with voices. With breathing. I yelled into it, asking if anyone was there. The breathing stopped. Then the elevator jolted and came to a sudden halt. The doors opened on the 4th floor. The hallway lights were off. That shouldn't have been possible. Emergency lighting should have kicked in automatically, but the hall beyond the doors was pitch black. I stayed inside the elevator, shining my flashlight out into the darkness. That's when I saw the footprints again. They weren't on the elevator floor this time. They were on the carpeted hallway. Wet, leading away from the doors. Bare feet. They went toward the stairwell. The staff-only stairwell. I slammed the door close button repeatedly until the elevator doors shut. The car descended rapidly and returned to the ground floor with a loud thud. I stumbled out, shaking. I reported everything to the night manager, who looked at me like I was exhausted or exaggerating. He said no guests were assigned to rooms near the service elevator that night. Maintenance logs showed nothing unusual. I wanted to leave, but I needed the job. Around 5 a.m., the elevator stopped one last time. This time, it stopped on the ground floor. The doors opened on their own. No one was inside, but the emergency phone was off the hook, hanging, gently swinging, and beneath it, on the floor, were the footprints, facing outward, as if someone had just stepped off the elevator and walked into the hotel. I didn't fix the elevator after that. I shut it down completely and waited out the rest of my shift sitting in the maintenance office with the door locked. When morning staff arrived, they restarted the elevator. It worked perfectly. No smells. No footprints. No errors. They told me I looked pale and asked if I was feeling okay. I quit 2 weeks later. I still stay in hotels sometimes. Every once in a while, when I'm alone in an elevator late at night, I'll feel it stop for just a second between floors. And when it does, I keep my eyes on the doors, because I don't want to see what might be standing there when they open. I've worked a lot of night shifts in my life, but nothing has ever come close to what happened when I worked overnight at a 24-hour gym. I was 19 at the time, fresh out of high school, taking a gap year before college. I needed money, and the gym was hiring night staff. The job seemed simple enough. Check people in, clean equipment, watch cameras, and make sure nobody does anything stupid. The gym was open 24/7, accessed by keycard. Members could come and go whenever they wanted. Overnight, there were usually only 1 or 2 employees on duty. Most nights, it was just me. The building was large but quiet. Rows of cardio machines on one side, free weights on the other, locker rooms in the back. Fluorescent lights stayed on all night, but they were dimmed after midnight. Everything looked slightly wrong, like the building was half asleep. From midnight to 6 a.m., the gym attracted a very specific crowd. Insomniacs, truck drivers, a few hardcore regulars who treated workouts like religion. By around 2 a.m., it usually emptied out completely. That night was no different at first. I was working from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. By 1:45, I'd finished cleaning, refilled the sanitizer stations, and done 2 walkthroughs. I was exhausted, so I sat down in the office and pulled up the security cameras. That's when I noticed him. He was on one of the treadmills in the far corner. Tall, skinny, long, messy hair hanging in his face. He was wearing ripped sweatpants and an old hoodie that looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks. What caught my attention wasn't how he looked. It was how fast he was running. I zoomed in on the treadmill display through the camera system. 9.0 miles per hour. That's fast, but not impossible. What was impossible was how long he kept going. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. He never slowed down. I pulled up the equipment monitoring software. Each treadmill reports live data, speed, runtime, heart rate if connected. His heart rate monitor wasn't connected. Runtime, 22 minutes. I leaned closer to the screen. His face never changed. No strain, no focus, no emotion, just staring straight ahead. Then I noticed his feet. He wasn't wearing shoes. He was barefoot. At first, I thought the lighting was playing tricks on me. I zoomed in further. Bare feet, slapping against the belt with every step. My stomach tightened. Gym policy requires shoes, but honestly, that wasn't my main concern anymore. Nobody runs barefoot for that long at that speed. And then I saw the blood. At first, it looked like sweat dripping from his ankles. Then I realized it was darker. The treadmill belt was smeared red. With every step, his feet struck harder, skin tearing, leaving streaks behind. I stood up so fast my chair tipped over. I told myself I needed to intervene. There was a safety issue, that I couldn't just watch this happen. I left the office and headed toward the cardio area. The sound hit me before anything else. A wet, rhythmic thudding. Not shoes on rubber. Flesh. When I rounded the corner, my breath caught in my throat. Blood splattered the sides of the treadmill. The belt was slick with it. His feet were shredded, skin hanging, toes raw and red. And he didn't react. His mouth was open wide, not breathing heavily, just open, like he was screaming without sound. I yelled at him to stop. Nothing. I shouted again, louder this time. That's when he spoke. Are you there? His voice was dry, raspy, calm, not out of breath. I told him to stop the treadmill. He didn't look at me. Are you there? He repeated. I backed away. The pool of blood at the end of the belt was growing. I turned and ran back to the office and grabbed my phone. As I dialed 911, I glanced at the cameras. He was staring directly into the lens. Still running. Still bleeding. Still smiling. Then he screamed, a deep, animal sound that rattled the walls. He jumped off the treadmill without slowing it down and sprinted out of frame. I clicked through cameras, heart racing. Nothing. 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 Then I checked the employee hallway camera. He was standing 6 feet from the office door, barefoot, covered in blood, smiling. I locked the door just as the handle started to turn. He slammed into it, screaming. Not words, just sound. The door shook. I screamed into the phone as dispatch told me officers were on the way. For 3 minutes, he screamed and pounded. Then it stopped. The cameras showed nothing. When police arrived, they searched the entire gym. No blood. No footprints. No man. The treadmill was clean. I quit the next morning. To this day, I don't work night shifts. And I never use treadmills. Because sometimes when I pass a 24-hour gym late at night, I swear I see someone still running inside. Never stopping. Never slowing down.